and the hot plate on top could keep an old-fashioned kettle and pan of soup on the go for hours. Add to all that the fact that Bertha was a godsend when the power went out, which was a sure bet at least once every winter here in Seabury, and Kate simply couldn't imagine life without her. It meant that no matter what was going on outside, Kate had a way to keep the cafe beautifully warm, as well as filling people's bellies with all manner of tasty treats. Of course, there was the added bonus that Stanley loved nothing better than curling up in front of Bertha when she was stoked up. Sure, that tended to make working in the tiny kitchen even more of a squeeze than usual, but Kate had always been clear. Bertha stayed. She was part of the family, just like Stanley and just like Trixie, her beloved delivery tricycle. And you didn't give up on family. Kate took a great gulp of lukewarm tea and turned back to her little living room. It might be Christmas Eve, but she hadn't hung any decorations in here. There simply wasn't the room because of all the Christmas cards. There were hundreds of them. They'd started arriving back in early November, bearing lovely notes and Christmas wishes from happy customers all over the world. Every single Christmas greeting delivered by her postman had made Kate's heart sing. There was something magical about knowing just how many people loved the Sardine as much as she did. The cards were tucked into every little nook and cranny. She'd balanced them along the tops of all her paintings, hung great long strips of them across the walls and the top of the doorway, and even her books had disappeared behind rows of them precariously placed along the front of every single shelf. Kate already knew that she'd feel sad packing them all away after the festivities were over, but she'd never get rid of them. These love letters to the Sardine were something she'd pack up carefully and treasure forever, just like she did every year. Kate stared around the room, taking in the cards one by one. She couldn't believe it was Christmas Eve already. What a year it had been. So much had happened, and a lot of it made her even more grateful than ever to be standing here, in her cosy living room above the Sardine. She felt so lucky to be getting ready to celebrate Christmas in her favourite place in the entire world. Honestly, what a year. She'd come so close to losing the Sardine to her idiot ex-husband. Thank goodness for Lionel swooping in to save the day. And, of course, it was impossible to think about Lionel these days without her mind wandering to the Pebble Street Hotel. He'd bought it on a whim after Veronica had done a disappearing act with a bunch of her guests' money. Bless him. He was doing his best. But Kate had a feeling that Lionel might have bitten off a bit more than he could chew. Then, of course, there was Mike, probably the biggest surprise the year had thrown at her. It had felt a bit like a disaster when the surly stranger had bowled into town and opened his rival coffee shop, New York Froth. But Mike's arrival in Seabury had actually turned out to be the beginning of something really special for her, something she still didn't quite dare believe was happening. Kate took a deep breath and shook her head as her eyes came to rest on the card that Mike had given her. A simple lino-printed blackbird sitting on a snowy gatepost. It had pride of place, right at the centre of her bookshelf. Inside it just said, "Merry Christmas, love Mike." She blushed as she thought about the number of times her thumb had traced the word love. Her toes seemed to tingle just thinking about him. If only they'd had the chance to spend a bit more time together. But the last few weeks had been full on for both of them. Never mind. Hopefully they'd get the chance to put that right, now that it was nearly Christmas. Kate let out a long sigh. Yes, it certainly had been an interesting year, and it wasn't over yet. But Seabury? Well, Seabury just seemed to carry on regardless. Sure, there were changes, but at its heart, the town was exactly the same as it had been when her old dad was alive. Popping her cup down on the side and wrapping her arms around herself, Kate let out a huge yawn. She really wasn't used to being up and about this early in the day, and she couldn't believe that it was an urgent desire to make a paper chain that had dragged her from underneath her warm duvet. But then, it was something she'd always done with her dad, when she was little. Every Christmas she'd begged him to help her, and every single year their little house had ended up full of them, looping across the doorways and ceilings, even in the bathroom. She smiled sadly, wishing that her